It's just one of those movies where literally I just like be walking about my day and a character's face would pop into my mind and I'd just be so pissed because of why. Hello, I'm a cool cats and kittens. It's me, Chris Lindsay, and we're gonna be talking about some movies. Well, a movie. Have you ever watched a movie and after you have like looked at the end credits, you see yourself, your reflection in whatever screen, and you just think, why? Like, you know, why was this movie made? Why did I watch this movie? Why is the sky blue at this point? Like, you're just like, because nothing made sense. Nothing had to happen the way that it happened, and yet it did, you know? So this is one of those movies. This movie is called Hot Gimmick, Girl Meets Boy. It's a Japanese movie. It was made in 2019. So it's a quiet teen's life is shaken up when she's forced to be her arrogant neighbor's servant. He loves her, but they both have a lot to learn about trust. So that is the synopsis you get from Netflix. And this is simple, straightforward story to romance about our homegirl, our home skillet Narita, who likes one guy and even goes out with him, but another guy likes her and he's doing everything in his power to stop that. And also he is her owner, is I think the word that he liked to use. So it's pretty straightforward plot, right? You're like, some of this is still fishy, but we get it. It's a romance. She likes one guy likes her. Boom, right? Antics, begin the antics, right? Okay, so let's just start off with, do we start at the beginning? Yeah, we'll start at the beginning. Okay, so at the beginning, we meet Narita. She's getting off of a train and then she meets her sister at the station. And her sister's like, oh, do you got it? Do you got what I need from you? Do you got the goods? And her sister's like, or Narita is like, yeah, I got it. It's in the bag right here. I got you, fam. Don't even worry about it. They leave the train station, but then on the bridge, Narita is like, oh, hold on. Wait a minute. Check and make sure that I got the right thing. And her sister whips that thing out and it's a pregnancy test, which we all knew because it was in a brown paper bag. Like, what else was it gonna be? Oh, you know, conspicuous and whatnot. Her sister's like, yeah, this is it. This is what I need. Ha 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 ha. And then Narita says something, but it makes, excuse me, it makes Akane like go from being like really happy and cheerful to being like upset. She's like, you don't understand what it's like to be a bad girl. I want to be a bad girl. Anyway, so she's like, you don't understand. And in her fit, she like twirls her bag around, and while she twirls her bag around, the pregnancy test goes flying. And when the pregnancy test goes flying out of the bag, a guy with a very early 2000s emo haircut catches it. At that same moment, she also encounters her brother, nice older brother, Shinogu. And he's like, you know, I'll be a good girl, little sis. And she's like, aha, you be a good brother, big bro. And at that same time, we see a guy that she was earlier, like, I say earlier, but like when she was getting off the train station, she saw a model who used to be their childhood friend. So Odogari, as they're in the whole pregnancy test catch and her and her sister are on the bridge, he drives by and we see him. And it gives us like these very, very, very opening title. It's very early 2000s in the editing style. It's a lot of photos. It's like, who was taking these pictures? But you know, you're like, okay, stylistic. We're meeting the characters. We know that these are all very important people in this story. Boom. So they get home and she tries to take the test, but obviously she can't because she flung it and bike dude with the swoop hair caught it. That bike dude with the swoop hair is Ryoki. So Ryoki, he caught it. So obviously she can't be taking that. But then like the very next day, she's like, oh, well, I got my period, sis. Thanks for buying that test though. And then her sister's like, oh, that's cool. That's chill. That's fine. We can go on about our life like nothing ever happened. But if that's what happened and that was it, we wouldn't have a story. Now would we? She's getting ready to go to school, and then like dude with a swoop here, he's like, hey, you slut. He hit her with the black youngster whore. He's like, I called your pregnancy test because I know it was, you know, he's like, it was you and your sister's younger than you, so obviously couldn't have been hers. It's obviously yours because you a slut. So now I'm gonna use this to blackmail you, and you're gonna be my servant, or in some of the some of the translations, slave. So then she's like, for whatever reason, she's like, oh my god, no, you can't do that, so I will be your slave. And at first I was like, okay, I get it, like, because it wasn't for her, it was for her sister, and her sister's younger than her, and so maybe it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't mind when people think of me, but they can't think a certain way of my family. Cool, I got you. Take responsibility for that. And he's teasing her. So Black dude with the swoop hair, he's like, you know, at her, you know, he's like, you're gonna be my slave, do this, do what I say, blah, 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 you know, basically being really mean to her for like no reason at all. You're being like really rude for no reason. And along comes the orange-haired guy from earlier that she was crushing on mad hard because he was a model in all the pictures that there is Asusa, Odagiri. He comes up and he's like, dude, why are you being rude? Let's go to school together. And he grabs her hand and they run away. Because she ran away with Orange Hair Boy, early 2000s swoop guy, he dropped the pregnancy test in their mailbox. And when she comes back from school, the mom like has the pregnancy test on the table and she's like, I need to talk to you girls. What is this, honey? And they're like, oh, it's just probably a mean joke, like really mean, like how very rude of whoever did that to do that. Even though they're both there, she's talking to, the mom is like basically talking to the sister, like kind of just showing how much like Narita is like a good girl, I guess, or like just like it just could not have been her. She's chilling, and then red-haired boy, orange-haired boy, he's this, and I'm like, colors. Orange-haired boy pops up and he's like, hey, you know, let's walk together to school. And she's like, okay. And so they're walking, and then early 2000s with the swoop, he comes in and he's like, slave, take my bag and walk me to school. And she's like, but because her and Orange Hair Boy was about to like get it popping, and so like she feels like she has no choice because she's agreed to become his slave for whatever reason. The job must read. Let's pause. Why does she become his slave? Literally, it wasn't her pregnancy test, and then he slipped it into their mailbox, so he didn't even have like his proof. Like that was his blackmail, was the pregnancy test, and then he like gave that away. So he's not a very good blackmailer in the first place. Anyway, she's like, oh, whatever though, because like she's getting like, I guess she's like used to like being pushed around. Like she doesn't have a backbone. She's just like a blank canvas essentially. So I mean, he says, you're my slave. She's like, okay, sure, essentially. They're at the train station and he's like, oh, you're mine. Why are you talking about another guy? Like, what is this? Why are you talking to another guy? He's like, since you're my slave, you have to kiss me. That's an order. And she's like, no. He's like, you got to do it. It's an order. And she's like, okay. And then she kisses him, but he was like, oh, that doesn't count as a kiss. And then he gets on the train and leaves. The credits then come to like 7 minutes into the story. After that, she walks back home and old dude with the red hair, why did I say red? His hair is orange. Old dude with the orange hair, he is chilling there and she's like, oh my God, did you wait on me? And he's like, no, I didn't wait on you. And so then they like have a scene and like, it's a very, you're like seeing the same action from two different sides and they're both like lit differently. I don't know if the lighting was supposed to tell us something. Like, I don't know if he was like oh yes, I'm using color theory, or he was just like, this gonna be a bop on the screen. It's very hard to like keep up. Especially in the scene, he's like, oh, I'm gonna ask you out, but you're dating him. And she's like, I'm not dating him. You know, like, we're just, you know, he just has something on me. He's like, oh, I do, I like you, I like you, whatever. And he's like, oh, I don't know, because you're dating him. And then he like walks away, and she's like, oh, a teen. Then we see early 2000s with the Shroop. And early 2000s with the Shroop is leaving school with his school friends, and they just so happen to coincidentally bump into Miss Narita and her sister. And then like the way he talks to her, all of his classmates are like, oh, is this the servant you was talking about? Like, this is your servant? And he's like, yeah, hang out with them. He like quite literally pushes her into them. Then one of the guys is like, he like kind of breaks her off from the pack, and he's like talking to her and touching on her, and she's like so obviously uncomfortable. Like, she is mad uncomfortable, as anybody would be, as any girl who's ever had to walk past a group of men feels like, but times 10, because you just got pushed into the group. Oh swoop, he like turns around and he sees it, and he's like, ugh. And so he like runs in and like grabs her, like runs away and like saves her, leaving her sister there, who's like, what? Like, with all of those dudes, you just left her. And so since they run away, then they're on a train to go back home, and like they're arguing, and then she gets upset. She goes to a different car, and then that car gets like really crowded, so like there's like a man, like an older man, squished on her, but it's not even like anything like crazy. He's just on her because there's nowhere else to be. But of course, oh Swoop can't have that, so he comes through with the pow. He's all up on her, and she's like, get off of me, get away from me. And he's like, no, you're mine. On the train, he's like, oh, I'm gonna upgrade you from servant to girlfriend. And then it's like, you see his true motives the whole time. So after that, she's walking home from that like weird encounter, and then oh, orange hair dude's dad is like, oh my god, I remember you used to play with my son. Well, I'm off to work, and I'm meant to give my son his passport that he like needs for a job. So here you go. Take that to him. And she's just like, okay. And she like doesn't steal his identity or make his pockets hurt. No, she goes and she gives it to him. At the photo shoot, you know, she's like looking for him, and she's like, do you guys know where he is? And all the models are mean, like, they let a fan in here, ew. And like this, that, and the other. But he saw her come in, and like, or he heard her, so he like comes in. He's like, oh, this is not a fan, this is my girlfriend. And she goes, she was like, you called me your girlfriend, like, what did you mean by that? And he was like, oh, you know, that was just so that they would leave you alone. He was like, I know they were just childhood friends. And she's like, yeah, just childhood friends. And then he like pulls her into his lap, and he's like, oh, but I want you. Then he kisses her, and she's like, oh my god, but childhood friends don't do that. And they're like really kissing, and then they get up to a different location, and they're still kissing. This is one of those like very artsy filmed moments, but it's like kind of cute for like what's happening is that like, you know, they're having their first kiss together. You're like, this is so cute. Okay, I'm for this, I'm with this. Go on, orange hair guy. But in the middle of their makeout sesh, he's like, oh, mwah, mwah, by the way, I'm back because my parents are getting a divorce. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Huh? Why are you talking about that while we're kissing? But as you'll later find out, that is actually an important plot point. So then he's like, oh, come with me, like, let's go to a party. So they go to a party, and he's like, oh, just go wait for me in one of those rooms. Goes, and she waits, because obviously she's not going to disobey anybody in this movie at all, ever. He goes and he gets her a drink, but before he gets a drink, he takes open a date rape pill, and he pops that thing open and just sizzles it into her drink. And then he says sorry and kisses the glass. Then he gives her the drink, and she takes a sip, and she's like, woo, woo, child. And he's like, oh, what? Like, do you want a soda instead? Like, is this too much for you? And she's like, no, 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 it's good. And then she drinks it, and I think she drinks all of it. And he's like, And then her brother, who we saw earlier on the bridge when, you know, all that tomfoolery was happening, he like sees her. He's like, oh no, oh no. And so he like rips open and he's like, oh, it's nice to see you. Come on, what are you doing here? Let's go. And so he sets her in a taxi cab and like sends her away. And like then he like stares wistfully, and then when she gets home, she is you know, wearing off the effects of being drugged, and she gets a call from orange hair dude. And orange hair is like, oh, I'm at a hotel, but I miss you so much. He's like, I wish that you could be here. And she's like, mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, I just want to see you naked. And she's like, what? He's like, yup, I want to see you naked. Girl, take it off. And she's like, no. And he's like, do it. Do it. You're so cute. Kawaii. Do it. And she's like, okay. And then she gets naked. And it's very, very uncomfortable to watch. But I think that, you know, it's meant to be. I think it's one of the things where we're not supposed to be like, oh, get it, girl. We're supposed to be like, ugh. In the morning, we just wake up to like her feet, essentially. She's so booty butt naked. And her brother wakes her up and he's like, excuse me, ma'am, what is this, honey? And he's like, orange hair guy, he sent me a video of you getting butt naked for him. Girl, what is this? And she's like, oh my God, he did what? Which is what all of us are like, oh my God, you did what? They're on the phone and he's like, oh, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Your dad is the one that my mom cheated with and had a baby, and that's why my parents are getting divorced. I needed venganza, revenge on you. Like, she ain't got nothing to do with that. When she answers his phone call, she was in the stairwell, and like right behind her just so happened to be Swoop. And so Swoop takes the phone and he's like, you better stop. And like he like threatened him, and it was like the big bad tough one. And then they're sitting and they're having a conversation, and he's like, you need to stop letting men like take advantage of you. You need to stop being so like dizzy and tipsy for men. Like, just stop it. Now what we find out is some tea, because obviously the older brother knows what orange hair has done because he sent it to him. And I was like, why would you send that to her brother? That's really weird, and that's really creepy. It is really weird and it is really creepy. But as we find out right here, he is not biologically her brother. He was adopted before she was born, so they don't share any blood. They still grew up all of her life being related, but he was like, I know I'm not related to you. So and we find out here that he has the hots for her. So they're taking this moment to try to make us feel something for whoever is supposed to be this main lead, which is 2000 Swoop. So like they show him trying to help her study for something or whatever, like prep, and he's like helping her, and it's supposed to be like a cutesy moment. And you know, I'm like, you know, unfortunately he gained a little right with me because he said that she was the universe, and I was like, oh, that's cute, that's real cute. But my sister was like, stop, just stop. And like I was like, stop, but I was like, okay, but he has one right, like just one, like half a right, maybe just one year. Old orange hair dude's agent comes in, and she is like, oh, by the way, I know that you hate him, but you wouldn't understand. We're the unfortunate souls, you know, like it's us. You wouldn't know because you have such a great life, even though in this hypothesis your dad cheated. But we're just gonna gloss over that because woe is not you, apparently. She's like, oh, after he hung up the phone of like his revenge phone call, he was crying, and I've never seen him do that. Like are we supposed to care? Like, do I care? Like, am I supposed to? Because I don't. She's like, oh, by the way, he's missing. He's supposed to come to a photo shoot and he's not there. Can you help me find him? And so, of course, because she's a blank canvas and she has no backbone, and she just, you know, she apologized when he did that to her. She goes out and she finds him. And then they have like a conversation. In this sequence, she took his hat and she put it on. And like, I was like, oh, girl, you should have run. Because that hat was cute on her. She should have took the hat and made it hers. But because she sat there and talked too long, he got his hat back, and they also kind of just came to no conclusion. Like the conclusion was like, yeah, you should hate me, but like you kind of don't. We are finally finding out that the brother is moving out, and that he's moving out because it's too much for him to bear to be with her in the same house because he loves her so much. And he's moving in with a DJ who we saw like in one scene prior, the scene where she gets like drugged. They're in the car and they're smoking. Very homoerotic scene. And I was like, what is the purpose? Like, oh, you're gonna move on from her with his new roommate, the DJ? Okay, that's fine. That's true. That's not what's happening. They were just smoking. And they weren't even like sharing either. So I don't understand why it was as erotic as it was. But it was. Then she comes out and she sees him smoking and she's like, oh, like, you need to say bye to mama last time. Like, she looked really sad. So he cuts out the car and they go in the elevator to go upstairs. The elevator gets stuck and she's like, oh my God, we're stuck in the elevator. She's pressing the button, trying to press the call button. Nothing's happening. And he's like, oh, it's just too bad. She was like really cold. So he gave her his sweater and she's like, oh my God, this reminds me of the time when we were young and I was really cold and you gave me your sweater and we were young. So we like huddled together. And so she tries to like cuddle up with him and he's like, get away from me. And so he moves and then she cuddles again and he's like, all right, that's enough. And then like he like kisses her. But to the audience's knowledge, up to this point, they have like, he does not know for a fact that she knows that they're not related. He just like goes for it. He's like, well, you know. And they kiss and I feel like that was all that's all that they gave us. They didn't give us really an aftermath of that. They kissed and then we were just slapped in the face with the next scene. So also in the car scene, I almost forgot, the brother got his DJ roommate to get the records of Orange Hair Guy's mom, and somehow very, very easily they found the ultrasound from the baby. The father of this baby wrote, I will always love you, or I will love you forever, or whatever the heck. But early in the movie, it was stated that one of the characters has a very, very similar handwriting to their dad. And so that's how we figure out that it's not actually Narita's dad who was cheating. It's actually, 2000 Swoop, whose dad is cheating, because they have very similar or the same hairstyles, handwriting. And then you're like, what? Who could see this coming? That he took a nude video of her and it wasn't even her parent, even though she had nothing to do with it in the first place. But don't get me started on that. He's so distraught to find out that it's his dad. Like, he takes Narita and he like goes to a hotel room and they're like kissing and they're like making out and they're about like it's getting hot and heavy and you're like, ooh. And then he like takes a condom and he throws it across the room. And she's just like, you threw it? And he's like, yeah, I want to do it raw. And I literally had to pause the movie and like stand up and walk away from my screen because I was like, what? He was like, I want to have a kid with you. I was like sucker punched because I was like, what in the world? He was like, I want to have a kid with you because it'll make whatever we have more concrete. And I was like, who said that? Like, your dad had a kid with your mom. And obviously that was not concrete. So your logic is real faulty. But then she's like, no, I don't want to do that. And she's like, what, like, tell me what's wrong. Like, why are you like this? What's wrong? So he tells her like, oh, it was my dad. And then he like starts breaking down crying. And she's like, you know, because he's like, oh, she's gonna hate me. And then she starts breaking down crying because she's like, I only wanted you to see me naked. Home skillet. We saw the first half of this movie. We know that's not true. But I feel it, you know what I'm saying? You know, sometimes mistakes are made. And for some reason, that's the end of their relationship in her mind. And then later his, because she runs away. And I'm just like, that's it. That did it for them because he didn't see her naked. So then they break up and she is just distraught. So she runs to her brother because Orange Hair Boy has done her dirty For some reason, that's the end of her relationship with Mr. Greaseball, Swoop. And so she runs to her brother because he is the nicest character. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that they were related, I'd root for this man. But they are, you know, though be it not by blood, they definitely grew up together, raised to believe that they were siblings. Anyway, she goes to him, and at this point in the movie, I think she's really just had a mental break, and she is like, you know, he makes her a glass of hot cocoa because he knows that she loves it, and she's like, oh my god, thank you, I love this, like, this is so perfect. And they're talking, and then she, like, all of a sudden is like, she's like, I want you to have me, I want to be yours. And he's like, ooh. And so she's trying to seduce him, and she goes and lays on his bed. He gets up, and he's like, you know, like, stop it, you need to stop it. And then she, like, lays down with her cocoa in hand, and she, like, spills some, and he's like, if you go any further, I'll explode. And she just, and, like, spills all the hot cocoa on the floor, on his nice hardwood floor. And do you know what this man does? He goes and he lays in it. He doesn't go on her. He doesn't even lay around it. Nope, he goes and he puts his nice white sweater just straight to the hot cocoa that's on the floor for no reason, might I add. Then she goes to school the next day, and orange hair boy has the audacity, the orangacity to like corner her in the library, and he's like, oh, if only I had known, like, the truth before. As soon as his, like, revenge was revealed, I was automatically annoyed anytime he would come on screen. So this, like, scene, literally, I was like, why are you here? After school, she goes to her brother's house again. Before the elevator can close, Nerissa is like, oops, like, I don't choose you, like, I'm being really mean by even, like, entertaining you. So then she leaves, and she goes and she finds, oh, Swoop. So then Narita starts, like, calling him stupid, like, oh, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. And he's like, no, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. And then, like, then she runs away, and he runs after her. And their chase was way too long for me because, first of all, she is, like, my height, and he is, like, tall. He has long legs. He could have been caught up with her, even on the steps. But they, like, chased each other for a really long time. And I think they, like, make it to, like, the bridge where all of the first tomfoolery happened. And then there's just, like, one point where they both stop, and Nerissa looks back at Swoop, and Swoop, he starts running, and she starts chasing him. They're chasing each other, and, like, they're, like, screaming at each other, and she's like, I can't have your baby, like, you can't rob me. Sorry. This is supposed to be her big, like, revelation, her big climax moment where she's like, you know, I need to stop trying to, like, be clay for these men and, like, really just mold myself. And, like, you know, she's like, I don't know what I want, and I don't know if, like, tomorrow's gonna be the same, but today I want you. And I'm like, yes, sister, a message we can sort of get behind. You know, he's, like, absolute trash, but, you know, you're putting your foot down and you're choosing the trash, and you're not letting the trash choose you. So, I mean, that's progress, that's growth. I'll accept. They basically both come to terms with, I don't know what tomorrow's gonna hold, but I want you today. And he's like, I'll accept that because I want you today. You know, I want you tomorrow too, but I'll take you today. And then you're like, catharsis, right? Like, that's it. No. Then she, like, goes, I guess, to say goodbye to her brother or whatever, and, like, they have, like, this big, you know, like, kind of a little mini chase with each other. So I lied to you. Actually, the nice conversation they had about, like, just accepting today happens after that. So that shows you how much I retained from their long cat and mouse chase. Honestly, they were screaming in the park, and my brain said elevator music. For some reason, like, the screen turns black and white, and, like, we've accepted, like, that they end up together. This is a movie that literally, even if you listen to how I explained it and you're like, oh wow, that's wild, wow, that's crazy, what, it's still so different experiencing it. it's such an experience that like I literally just I don't even after I've gone through the synopsis, I'm too stunned once again to even. What was the hot gimmick? There was no hot gimmick. And also, why is it called Girl Meets Boy when she knew all three of the love interests at the beginning of the movie? She knew all of them. She knew of at least Oh Swoop. She knew from her childhood Orange Hair, and of course she knew her own brother. So what boy did she meet, and what gimmick was hot? My biggest question though, I think, is just, why you spilled that hot chocolate, girl? What was you doing? Like, he sat there and made you a beautiful chocolatey glass of cocoa that you took 2 sips out of before spilling it all over his nice hardwood floor. We could have just set the mug down. As I previously stated, I do have a list of movies, so I will be sure to bring more of these movies that make you go, why? And make sure you leave any recommendations, you know, on any of my socials. Go on and leave them so that we can both be confused, disgusted, appalled together. Bye bye now. Zaijian. Adios.
Peace.
The movie is 2 hours long, y'all. It was 2 hours of tomfoolery.